Request, live from the heart of Brooklyn. Pull Request is an hour-long podcast about everything in and relating to technology. Starring two techno experts, Eric Newman, hi, and Chris Grabowski.
Hello.
This week's episode, The Spam Box. Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another Pull Request. My name is Eric Newman, and to my left is the wonderful Chris Grabowski. Hello, how are you?
Oh, hello.
Hello.
I'm doing just fine.
Good. How was your day? How was your weekend?
Pretty good. Got to see my folks.
Oh, yeah?
Well. Yeah.
They did you see them for Mother's Day last week, or?
No, they couldn't make it into the city, so we did it this week instead.
Were they on one of those Long Island trains that can't make it to Penn Station?
No, instead they were in Long Island traffic. They couldn't make it across the bridge for literally an hour.
Which bridge?
Trying to think. They came up by my hood, so I think
the Queensboro Bridge.
I think they took the Queensboro. Yeah.
Why wouldn't they take the tunnel?
That's usually even worse.
No, but I thought they built the tunnel to take the traffic off the bridge. That's why it's tolled. The bridge isn't tolled, but the tunnel is.
Yeah, but why would that ever work?
That's a good question.
Exactly.
And so, yes, and let's not talk about trains because we only have a limited amount of time to do the show today. We have a hard stop in about an hour, which is good for the people that don't like us going on for too long, but bad for those of us who like getting deep into content. So today's show, let's get right to it, is about... Hey, I said today's show is about... Come on.
Mail time. The mail's here.
That's right, email. Do you want me to play the rest of the song?
No, but I know it.
I think most of us alive in the late 90s know it.
Even though at first I thought the first word was Mailtar, which reminded me of the original Toonami.
Oh.
Yeah.
No, that's much too cool for this. This episode's about email. That's right. Electronic mail, I thought, was a much simpler topic to distill into...
No, I warned you.
You warned me. I did not heed your advice. And I'm regretting it now. No, I'm not regretting it now. I just realized what happened was this, Christian. You know, we've been alive for a while. We've been on the internet for a while. When we started out on the internet, email was pretty simple. And
it was pretty complex, even back in the days of the modem.
What?
The dial-up modems, I should say.
I don't think that well, no, you're right. It was still years of meetings of standards bodies before you could get to it.
Basically, since it's been a publicly available thing, it's been pretty complex. That was one of those things that was figured out pretty early on in the world of academia of how to use it, which is probably why it's so complex.
Well, I mean, I think it's also complex because you have standards bodies, which are bureaucrats, arguing with each other for years, and then
but that's one that definitely has to be standardized completely. But,
absolutely, because it has to interoperate between completely different carriers. They don't talk to each other, so you do need a standard. And in fact, the modern email standard is not the first one that was used. The first one that was used was X400. Did you hear about that?
Yeah.
What was X400?
I would not remember offhand, but
I made a big mistake.
I do know that was an authentication thing.
It provided authentication. Actually, we made a big mistake. I forgot to recap from last week about the ransomware, because it's a big deal. Let's take a quick tangent. I know we're pressed for time, but we really should talk about the ransomware, because it's a big deal.
Because of people who are just going around emailing people saying that they are the ransomware, and if they don't pay a certain amount of money, not in Bitcoin, which the actual ransomware is asking for, but in cash, to a certain Indian company at 4 p.m. Indian time.
Well, first, let's take it easy. First, a couple of things. We said last week that it was Windows XP or developers maybe trying to get Windows XP off the face of the earth. Not a bad thing. Who may have invented this. We were wrong, because in fact, most computers that were infected with WannaCry ran Windows 7.
That also makes a lot of sense.
It does make a lot of sense because it's the most popular operating system, I think, of Windows. Let's say full stop. It's probably better than 10. And the New York Times actually has a really nice animated infographic that shows the worldwide infection of WannaCry over the course of last week. And if you just search for that in Google, you'll find it. If we had a page that showed show notes, we could post it there, but we don't, so look it up. So first, WannaCry was heavily localized. There's this website where you can see a nice screenshot of WannaCry installed, or WannaCry appearing on installations of Windows around the world. It's in a bunch of different languages. It's on an Italian ATM machine. It's everywhere. I'm sure it's at some Walmart self-checkout machine somewhere in America. Because, those are connected to the internet and never updated. Yeah, it's just scrolling through this. They have it in Japanese. They have it everywhere. Everything has a localized version, which is great in the era of globalized computing, in the era of everybody can be anywhere. But it's very, very bad for the victims of this ransomware, which is a lot of people. Was actually mostly Windows 7, which stinks. But, like we said last week, Microsoft has patched all this stuff. So go update. Run Windows Update. When it says, do you want us to install updates? Say yes. Take the few minutes to an hour, because it's Windows, and let it do its thing. What happens with any successful exploit, any successful major crime, is that you get copycats. And one of the copycats, like you said, Christian, were people that were not affiliated with this at all, that slapped together a visibly horrible email message that tried to solicit actual money from people. And it says, and if you want I can do the accent, but it says, we represent WannaCry ransomware, and we will put your site under attack.
Did they establish that they're Russian?
I don't know.
Think so.
It just fits with the dialogue.
I think that's mildly racist there.
No. Russians are a race. Anyway, we represent at WannaCry ransomware, and we will put your site under attack through massive botnet under our control. We will put it under attack effective 4 p.m. Thursday Indian time. Wait a second. Everybody in the media are assuming Russia is up to everything. So to say this might be possibly Russia is nothing.
Well, I called it on that Indian time thing because...
you're right. Indian time.
Yeah.
No! See, that's a way for them to...
That was the fake email, by the way. That's not the actual ransomware, guys.
No, I know it's not the actual... What did I just say? Are you listening to the show?
Yeah,
I said it was their copycats.
You're talking a mile a minute. Oh, the copycats, okay.
I'm sorry, well, we have a lot to get to, so I've got to crank it up. Or do some crank. Okay, I'm sorry. You're right. They're probably Indians. I won't do that accent. But we will put it under...
Wow, that's still racist, though.
What?
Although, yeah, Indian time, okay.
Indian time. Come on.
Yeah.
This is not... Anyway. We will put it under attack effective 4 p.m. Thursday Indian time. We will take it down promptly, but we will interrupt you to annoy your users unless you decide to pay us 2 bitcoins. You have time until tomorrow, 9 p.m. Indian time, to decide, after which we will unleash our botnet on your site, and then the ransom will increase by 1 Bitcoin daily as long as you decide to delay and waste our time.
That's not how ransomware works.
Now, what they didn't do is the biggest problem with with these things. They didn't enclose a call to action to actually pay them. So they're full of BS. But the email that they have underscores something interesting. They're using this service called Mail-to-Tor. And to jump back into email, Mail-to-Tor is a really cool way that you can set up a self-destructing email account. There are other ways. There are other vendors that do self-destructing email accounts, like Mailinator or 10-Minute Mail. But Mail-to-Tor encrypts all of your messages and will delete the account. As I'm trying to pull it up because this was actually at the end of the list for today. Anyway. We'll talk about that later. Other stuff's been happening on the internet. The FCC is trying to kill net neutrality. There have been a bunch of bots that are trying to fight the people that John Oliver told to go protest the FCC trying to destroy net neutrality. So that's kind of funny. Either way, it's probably not going to make a difference. They're going to do what they want, and we're just going to have to live with it. So that's a nice... If you want to fight the botnet, make your own botnet that calls the FCC or comments to the FCC and says, from a bunch of connect through different VPNs, have different IP addresses with different names and styles of writing, and say, it was good. It was actually good what Tom Wheeler did, even though those rules didn't take effect yet. And don't repeal them, because once they've had a chance to take effect, they'll be really good.
I mean, I actually went and myself filled one out physically. But
really?
Yeah. After watching the John Oliver thing, just went to gofccyourself.com.
Yeah.
It's a link that'll forward you right to the web form to fill out for signing the petition directly to the FCC. You can also, of course, create a bot, which now I am very tempted to do.
I think, like I said, because there was a bot already created to fight the good people, I think the good people need a bot to fight the other bots. And the bad bot is using really advanced technology because it was coded pretty well. So,
Well, it sounds like it was paid for.
By Verizon.
Yeah, imagine that.
By the way, on John Oliver's list of awful cable companies and internet service providers, he left off the internet service provider that also owns HBO. Funny how they don't have commercials, but they still can't insult the parent companies. You think they have editorial freedom when, in fact, they're just as bad as everybody else. Maybe slightly better. Anyway, 11 minutes in. Okay. You want to do a really quick newsreel? Here, we'll do one really quickly.
Okay.
Nobody presents News Toyos. Theresa May wants to kill encryption again.
That was our best newsreel so far.
And we're done. I was thinking about it. I know we're pressed for time. I wrote out this whole thing, but like that's the long and short of it. Like we said last week, she and Macron and Merkel and Comey,
now she's proposing her own internet.
Internet. She wants to make her own internet, which is not going to happen. She's just going to try. One thing that I don't understand is how can one country regulate what's on a global market without everybody else agreeing?
They can't.
They can't. But they can try. And the EU loves trying to mess with American companies that run the internet. And they're going to try it again. Any way that any country in Europe can levy fines against an American technology giant, they're working on ways right now. I'm sure there's a think tank that's their whole job is to figure out how we can make these American companies pay us more money.
All of European government seems to work is to assume your country is the best, which is also the case for America. Basically, all Western civilization.
Most governments, I believe.
Yeah.
Except for Canada, they realize that we're the best, but that's fine.
Yeah, they just apologize for everything.
Yeah. Which, sometimes... I mean, we have to apologize for our president. That's another story.
Except for Ruffles All Dressed. They're very proud of having that, whatever that is.
Oh, that's with... All Dressed is the works. So it has, like... Salt.
Is it? I heard it was, like, just like it's a very own... Very,
No, when you order something, instead of saying, like...
Oh, no, I know. I know
dressed.
Traditionally, All Dressed is the works, basically. But I think in this specific case of Ruffles, I believe... It's actually a particular sauce.
It's not just like salt and vinegar?
No, it's like a particular sauce that has like all these spices and ingredients.
Yeah. You know what they also have in Canada that they will not sell in the U.S., and I did see it also in Israel, is ketchup-flavored Pringles.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of those.
I've wanted to try them.
Also, milk in bags.
Milk in bags. Tim Hoare. Anyway, getting off track. Back to...
Mail time. The mail's here.
Okay, back to email. Email's been around since the 70s. Honestly, it's been around in various incarnations earlier than that. In 1965, MIT's compatible time-sharing system, the CTSS, in 1961, allowed multiple users to log on to a central system from remote dial-up terminals and store and share files on a central disk. Informal methods of using this to pass messages were developed and expanded. So in 65, they had the CTSS mail. But, in 1962, I don't know why this is not chronological, there was other, basically, ways for universities and large bureaucratic organizations to message each other without actually sending a letter to each other. And this all started in the 60s, and then it kind of slowly evolved in the 70s. In the 70s, Send Message, a local inter-user mail program incorporating the experimental file transfer program CPYNet, I'm guessing that's CopyNet, allowed the first networked electronic mail. In 1972 was the first Unix mail program. Also in 72 with the APL mailbox by Larry Breed. 74, there was more stuff. In 78, the mail client, it was just called Mail. Looks like Apple wasn't original. Written by Kurt Schoens for Unix and distributed by the Second Berkeley Software Distribution, included support for aliases and distribution lists, forwarding, formatting messages, and accessing different mailboxes. That was 1978. 79 was another messaging system. In the early 80s, more mail messaging systems proliferated. There's one Profs, PROFS by IBM, All-in-One by Digital Equipment Corporation, and HP Mail by Hewlett-Packard. They were superseded in the early 1980s by mail clients that ran on local area networks. like WordPerfect Office and Microsoft Mail. I miss Microsoft Mail. Oh, and Lotus Notes, of course. You ever use Lotus Notes?
Nope.
Nope. It's okay. It's very 1993. And it still runs. And I believe that is a unit test for future versions of Windows. That's why they say Windows ain't done until Lotus will run. Yeah, Microsoft Mail. Microsoft, that was before they created Outlook or Outlook Express. A lot of stuff. When my mom was a teacher's aide in the 90s, she used Microsoft Mail in her school district. I thought it was really cool. Just because email was, I don't know, it was so cool to use it. There was that send message program written for Unix that allowed people to send messages, and then somebody rewrote that.
Well, if I remember, the original send message wasn't even like a over the wire. It was you're all logged into a mainframe and you send a message
to other users on the mainframe. Yeah. In the early 70s, Ray Tomlinson, who's the guy who's created with developing email, even though it was really a group effort, as you can see, updated an existing utility called Send Message so it could copy messages as files over the network. Lawrence Roberts, the project manager for the ARPANET development, took the idea of Read Mail, which dumped all recent messages onto the user's terminal, and wrote a program for 10x and Techomat, I don't know what those are, called RD, I'm guessing that's Read, which permitted access to individual messages. Barry Wessler then updated RD and called it NRD. Blah, blah, blah. Other people updated it, including read access for sending a help system, blah, blah, blah. John Vidal then updated Send Message to include 3 important commands. Move, the combined save and delete command. Answer, determine to whom an open reply should be sent. And forward, to forward the mail. And then he renamed all of that Message, or MSG. And that was the first real congealing of sending a message to somebody else electronically. Yeah. There were other email early...
How many of those messages of the original message program were just ASCII middle fingers?
No, they were probably just like Q. Hey, did you get a Q? No. No, I got a T. Damn it. Okay. ARPANET mail, experimental mail transfers between remote computer systems, began shortly after the creation of ARPANET in 1969. Ray Tomlinson, like I said, the guy credited with creating email, is generally credited as having sent the first email across the network and initiating the use of the @ symbol to separate the names of the user and the user's machine in 1971. Yeah. As the influence of the ARPANET spread across academic communities, gateways were developed to pass mail to and from other networks such as CSNet, JANet, BitNet, X400, and FidoNet. This often involved addresses such as something really long at some domain.something.com, which routes mail to a user with a bang path address at a UUCP host. What is a bang path?
I would not know, honestly.
That is really a...
That means 2 things.
Yeah, that is a hard one to Google for.
Yeah, jeez. An email address
it would involve
of this form was known as a bang path. Bang paths, what was this? Could be used to send mail. It's a format. It's just a format that allows you to derive where the stuff was going to in a specific format. Bang paths of 8 to 10 machines or hops were not uncommon in 1981, and late-night dial-up UUCP links would cause week-long transmission times. Imagine waiting a week to send an email or receive an email.
Snail Mail 2.0.
Snail Mail 2.0, yeah. The pseudodomain ending .uucp was sometimes used to designate a hostname as being reachable by networking, although this was never formally registered in the domain name system. So they actually developed a fake TLD. But back then, it probably was not that big of a deal. Yeah. In general, like older email address formats, bang paths have now been superseded by the @ notation. There you go. There's a lot of stuff. Email has a lot of components.
Yep. Yes, it does. I warned you.
I know. There's a lot of components. There's, there's I mean, there's the way that you send it. There's the message transfer service. There's the message transfer agent. There's the message user agent. There's the message store. There are relay servers. There are block lists. There are blacklists. There are domain keys. There's I forgot what SPF stands for.
I mean, you look at like just as what goes
sender
involved
policy
into
frameworks. There's a lot of stuff that all goes into I'm sending you an ASCII middle finger.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
But like you look at all the stuff that goes into like just serving your own mail server, or like I don't know, I read mail or something, or running like mail clients themselves. Like anything that's really substantial that to either build a mail client or to run a mail server takes a lot of work. Actually, that both from a security standpoint, because just to be able to filter out spam, as well as to be able to actually sometimes there's that concern of privacy of all of your email on somebody else's server, which if you're the Richard Stallman type, you're only running open source mail servers that you host yourself.
Or you could use Mail to Tor, where it's everything is encrypted, and then you can delete the messages.
I mean, it also, in contrast, there's a lot of these messengers now that are trying to replace email that are more of the instant messenger types, but they're stored forever.
Yes, like Slack or Hangouts or Skype.
Yeah, and I'd even say for like the privacy situation, you got things like Telegram.
You there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, I thought you were going on a list. You just got
I mean, there's other ones. I can't think of them offhand. There's like
I mean, there's also GPG.
Well, GPG is not.
Or sorry,
privacy.
PGP. PGP.
GPG is a type of PGP. It's the GNU PGP.
Yeah, it's the GNU Privacy Guard. I'm sorry, I meant PGP. There's an extension that allows you to transparently send PGP mail in Gmail.
Yeah, I do that.
Yeah, so do I.
It's just. It's not that makes it more private, actually. What it does is it's a signature saying that this is, in fact, this person that you say they are.
Well, let's pin that, because we'll talk about email security later. While we're still talking about the early days of email, I wanted to touch on X400. It has a weird name, and it was the first standard for sending electronic messages created by the government. And it was superseded by SMTP. And that ran on the regular internet. X400 ran on the ARPANET. Message handling is a distributed... let me do the thing. We got it, once an episode. I always forget which stupid one. Here we go. Message handling is a distributed information processing task that integrates two related subtasks: message transfer and message store. The International Telecommunications Unit, ITUT, recommends recommendations define specific protocols for a wide range of communication tasks. For example, the P1 protocol is used explicitly for communication among mail transfer agents, the P3 between the user agent and the MTA, and the P7 between the user agent and the message store. In the 1994 version, P7 was enhanced to provide folders in the message store and allowed storage of submitted messages and provide many automatic actions such as auto-foldering and a correlation of replies, delivering reports, and receipt notifications with submitted messages. It's a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that was 1994. Auto-foldering, correlation of replies, delivery reports, receipt notifications, 94 in X400. X400 also has been used as the core of Microsoft Exchange Server.
That explains a lot.
So, well, the thing is that X400 has security built in. SMTP does not. It was an add-on. X400, let's see. They have their own message format, which is not the same as the bang path, and it's not the same as the @ format. But you have your global identification, domain identification, country name, and it's like a whole, like basically registering a domain name. You have your country name, your administrative division, your private management domain, organization name, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And then you just separate it all by semicolons, and that's probably a really long address. Yeah. The first large-scale use was conducted in the U.S. under a military communication contract in 1992 to 1997. So, yeah. It has security features built in rather than SMTP after the fact. It predates TCP/IP, actually. So it was meant to ride on one of the primordial OSI transport layers that was not TCP.
Well, probably UDP because you need to be in the user space to control it. So you're just basically sending raw packets.
Just raw packets.
Yeah.
It lost to SMTP in terms of popularity, but X400 is still used by enterprises where security is important, including the U.S. military, and was the heart of the Microsoft Exchange server until 2007. So yeah, SMTP, the Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, is something that I once wrote by hand when I was in high school to write a program that can spam people, because 15 years ago, mail servers were a lot less secure. And a lot of people had semantically named email addresses. If you knew how to use SMTP, and when I say use SMTP, I mean you could telnet. It runs on port 25 if it's unsecured. You can telnet to that port, and if you know the protocol, you can just write a message. So when I was in high school, I figured out that, I mean, it's not rocket science. Every faculty member had their first initial dot their last name at the school. So then you could just say, from this teacher, caret email address, to this other teacher, caret email address. Subject, go fuck yourself. Excuse me. I forgot where we were. But you can do that, and I was 17. Earlier, sorry, I was 15. Yeah, and you could say that when someone gets this message, wow, why did they say this? Who's been doing that? And if you do it properly, and especially back then, you really couldn't tell the difference between a legitimate email that was, especially because it was sent in the domain. It was sent within the same network. Oh, yeah. So it wasn't even like if they turn off relaying for external hosts, that's totally fine because I'm already in the network.
I mean, clearly that should have been used to leave the best memos ever.
And clearly,
attention
it should have
faculty,
some kind of awful
please
suspension.
only use the faculty bathrooms for their intended use. Do not set up slip and slides in them.
How about who pooped in the sink?
I wanted to go there, but I thought I shouldn't go there. But
it's fine. That's enough explicit content for now. SMTP. Should we even talk about the protocol itself?
I mean, I think a lot of people don't actually know about it.
The protocol itself, you start off by saying hello. Wow, that's crazy. And based on, and this is very bare SMTP. We'll talk about add-ons to SMTP that make it more secure in a minute, but right now, you say hello or hello and your host name. This way, if the server filters based on host, even though that is, of course, entirely fudgeable because you're just typing it in, or a program is typing it in.
SMTP was also designed originally to be within an intranet, not an internet.
Well, that's probably why they just assumed, much like the early versions of Windows and Mac OS, they just assumed that everyone who had access to the computer was a good guy. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of why the security it's kind of awkward for them to bolt on after the fact, because like X400, like Windows NT, like Unix, they need to be designed from the ground up with security in mind, with multiple users in mind, with authentication in mind, to create a really secure system. And this type of backwards flow that we've created with modern email and SMTP is precisely the reason why spam is so much of a problem, why phishing is so much of a problem, and why we have to have so many other layers of security, because they're all on attacking symptoms but not necessarily the cause, which is something that we can't really fix 20, 30 years on. So, you say hello to the server, and you give your domain name. Then you say new line. All of these are terminated by new lines. Mail from, : you have your name or whatever, display name, carets, your email, bob@example.org. Hit enter. The server will say, hopefully, it'll say something like OK and give you an error code of 250.
One thing to also keep in mind is this is also done over TCP, so you have, when you think about all the packets going back and forth for this, you've got everything doing the SYN act, all those things at the TCP level, and then you have these doing the hello, host, all that.
That seems very overheady.
Well, no, it's to ensure that your message is delivered.
Okay. You can send the message to multiple people with multiple RCPT, receipt to. So you can say receipt to Christian@grabowski.org.
RCPT is a command, though, right? There's the mail command, RCPT, and the data command.
Yes, and quit.
Which mail is the return address, RCPT
is receipt.
is the recipient.
You're sending the recipient, not receipt. I'm sorry.
And then the data
is the body.
And
then you end the body with a period on a blank line. And then it'll say, okay, good job. And then you say quit, it says goodbye, and that's it. Your mail begins its long journey down the internet to another mail server, where it may get bounced back because of a variety of reasons. Relaying is a big problem. In the earlier days of the internet, it was, I guess, more acceptable, but also more necessary to kind of relay race email around the internet. And what happened was people used to just leave these open mail relays, people used to leave these mail relays open. And so with the zero security, you could do a lot of stuff, and of course involving
with
buffer overflows and exploits on the servers.
Well, yes, no. But another part about mail relays that is interesting is the fact that the DNS involves for email. Normally in an email server, you use an MX record to look up, but with a relay, you actually use an A record. So it's even more overhead to do all the DNS resolution.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Interesting. Yes, we should also mention that the mail exchange is a completely separate part of the domain name system. That's, even though it may have the same domain as your website, it's a completely different DNS record, and it's accessed a completely different way. The original design of SMTP had no facility to authenticate users or check that servers were authorized to send on their behalf, with the result that email spoofing is, of course, possible, much like I showed you from my real-world, thank God I didn't actually get in trouble, example. I did get in trouble later on, but that's another story. They thought I had hacked something because I had done stuff like this earlier, but I didn't. Anyway. Let's see. Did we miss anything with Open Relay? No. It's now generally considered a bad practice, and it's worthy of email blacklisting. Blacklisting. It's a big problem, actually. My email, pneumonium.com, was recently... Take it easy. My email at pneumonium.com was recently blacklisted. You can find out if you go to a website called MX Toolbox and type in your email address or just the domain name. It'll run through a list of common blacklists and then tell you which one it's on. And if any of these, let's say 20 blacklists has you on it, you have to figure out how to get yourself off, and that's not necessarily easy.
Easiest way is to declare yourself as a church.
I can't do that. I'm Jewish.
I know. Well, actually, any religious organization, technically.
Well, then if I did that, then I could probably become tax-free.
They are actually exempt from... you do not need to put one of those unsubscribe me buttons. You do not need to say that...
Really?
Yeah, you do not have to say that this person requested your email or anything like that. You can just send email to anyone all you want if you're a religious organization.
Huh. That's good to know. Well, then you know what? Sign me up. And we don't have to pay tax.
Your apartment's going to become a temple?
I have a mezuzah on the door already, so why not? Anyway, let's see. So that's SMTP. We talked about message transfer agents. We talked about email forwarding is funny. It's not what I shouldn't say funny, but it's interesting because it's it's another one of these is more complex than originally let on. There are two types of forwarding. There's server-based forwarding and client-based forwarding. Server-based forwarding is primary servers can deliver a message to a user's mailbox and or forward it by changing some envelope address or tilde.forward files. And then, actually, I'm sorry, the .forward files allow you to set up forwarding addresses for your email box if you put that in. So when on a Unix mail server, when a message is delivered to your account, which means if I'm running a Unix mail server and it's Eric at pneumonium.com, they'll look for a user Eric. And if Eric has a .forward in his user folder, then they'll read that and they'll say, oh, where does he want to forward the mail to? Let's go send it here. And then that really quickly, also without, I believe, with minimally changing the headers, will forward the mail. You won't get that on behalf of that a lot of servers like to do. They like stamping, putting their stamp on your email. let's see.
The equivalence of the X powered by.
Exactly. No, you're right. Email administrators sometimes use redirection as a synonym for server-based email forwarding to different recipients. Protocol engineers sometimes use the term mediator to refer to a forwarding server. Because of spam, it is increasingly difficult to reliably forward mail across different domains, and some recommend avoiding it at all if possible. There's forwarding versus remailing. Plain text message forwarding changes the envelope recipients and leaves the envelope sender field untouched. The envelope sender field does not equate to the from header, which email client software usually displays. It represents a field used in the early stages of the SMTP protocol and subsequently saved as the return path header. This field holds the address to which mail systems must send bounce messages, reporting delivery failure or success, if any. By contrast, the terms remailing or redistribution can sometimes mean resending the message and also rewriting the envelope sender field. Electronic mailing lists furnish a typical example. Authors submit messages to a reflector that performs the remailing to each list address. That way, bounce messages, which report a failure delivering a message, will not reach the author of a message. However, annoying misconfigured vacation auto-replies do. I actually wondered about that. Are the combating auto-replies handled at the mail server level, or is that handled at the mail client level?
I think it's open to implementation.
That's really bad.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, isn't that a Mentos and Diet Coke situation that could honestly bring down a lot of the internet if everybody's autoresponder started auto-responding to everybody else?
Yep, which I think would make a lot of sense to have on the server then. But it's also the case that, I mean, email these days, I would not know how they combat that. But if it were that it's on the internet level, which, I think a lot of places still have.
I don't think that could be on the internet level.
Intra.
Oh, intra. Okay.
Yeah. And, I know plenty of companies still have, the you can only send within your company option. And that's where the I'm on vacation emails get sent in some cases, which that might actually be handled on the server and be able to say, okay, this is an auto reply. Don't send an auto reply back.
I wish there was some kind of bit that we could set to say, like, a human didn't send this message. It's automatically generated. This way you could flag it. But, of course, that probably, too, can be spoofed because it has to operate on a virtually clear channel.
Okay, well, actually, now that I think about auto-reply, I'm almost positive it has to be on the server, just because the only one I was questioning was Outlook, for that possibly being in the client. But okay. I know from the last time I used Outlook several years ago, it is, in fact, on the server. So, auto-reply is on the server.
Interesting. You think it just does some, some quick regex for the, I don't know.
No, it stores the data that this is set on auto-reply, this particular
But
address.
wait, what server is sending that? That's not the remote
email
server. No, which email server?
That is sending the auto-reply. This only works on intranet. I have no idea how the internet would work.
Yeah, that's what okay. Okay, that makes sense then. Yeah. All right, let's talk about some more protocols. We talked about SMTP. Actually, let me reorganize this because I just found... Let's bring this up. SMTP hacks and how to guard against them. Here's some common SMTP hacks because, like we said, it's typically insecure. However, in most modern implementations, which probably exclude running locally inside of a protected network, most of the time, modern email services use SMTP over SSL or TLS, where everything is end-to-end encryption, which will soon become illegal in many countries. Anyway, SMTP hacks and how to guard against them. Some hacks exploit weaknesses in the simple mail transfer protocol. This email communication protocol was designed for functionality, not security. So ensuring that you have some level of security will help protect your information. There's the standard account enumeration attack, because it will respond when the account does not exist on the system. Blah, blah, blah. Open relaying, SMTP relaying, lets users send email through external servers. Obviously. Open email relays aren't the problem they used to be, but you still need to check for them. Spammers and attackers can use an email server to send spam or malware through an email under the guise of an unsuspecting open relay owner. And it tells you how to turn that off. And it says simple countermeasures, disable relaying. Okay, there you go. Here we go. Enforce authentication if your email server allows it. You might be able to require password authentication on email addresses. Okay, this is all pretty simple stuff. Email header disclosures. If your email client and server are configured with the typical defaults, a hacker might find critical pieces of information like the internal IP addresses of your client's machine, the software versions of your email client and server along with their vulnerabilities, or host names that can divulge your network naming conventions and structure. Also malware. Email systems are regularly attacked by such malware, viruses, and worms. Verify your antivirus software is actually working. Yeah. And those are some simple SMTP hacks. Let's see. All right, let's talk about POP, the Post Office Protocol. If you were alive in the 90s and sent email, you were probably using POP or POP3. In computing, the Post Office Protocol is an application layer internet standard protocol used by local email clients to retrieve email from a remote from a remote server over a TCP/IP connection. And basically what happens is it supports download and delete access for remote mailboxes. So when a message is delivered to a POP address and you download it, the message stays on the server and it gets copied to your local machine. Every couple of weeks, and this is configurable in most email clients, even though this is a server-level operation, it'll purge your account, and then it'll allow you to send more mail. You could also, of course, manually delete stuff because, especially back then, a lot of people had a really low email limit of a few megabytes, and a lot of most email also back then was plain text, so it didn't really take up that much space. POP1, much like HTML1, never saw the light of day. POP1 was specified in RFC 918 in 1984. POP2 was specified in 1985, and POP3 in 1988. The original POP3 spec supported only an unencrypted user pass login mechanism or the Berkeley.rhost access control. POP3 currently supports several authentication methods to provide varying levels of protection against illegitimate access to a user's email. And we can contrast that with the Internet Message Access Protocol, or IMAP, which is, I think, more modern mail is delivered over IMAP these days than it is with POP.
In fact, most mail servers are actually trying to, I think, deprecate POP.
I don't see a reason to use POP over IMAP if you can.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you go back in time to the mid-90s and you don't really have that good of an internet connection and you need to download all your mail for 2 weeks. But then if something new happens, you won't really see it on time, so whatever. But the Internet Message Access Protocol, or IMAP, is another internet standard protocol that runs on the application layer. It was designed with the goal of permitting complete management of an email box by multiple clients. Therefore, clients generally leave messages on the server until the user explicitly deletes them. IMAP listens on port 143, and IMAP over SSL, or IMAP-S, is assigned the port 993. Most modern email systems, if they offer a vanilla way of accessing your email, use IMAP. Let's see. Where was the advantages over POP? It has connected and disconnected modes of operation, so you can have an offline mode, and then it'll sync your changes back to the server when it gets back online. Multiple clients simultaneously connected to the same inbox, like your phone and your iPad and your desktop. Access to MIME message parts and partial fetch. Now, I'd like to think that this is more of a client thing necessarily than a protocol level. It says, usually all internet mail is transmitted in MIME format. We'll get to that in a second. Allowing messages to have a tree structure where the leaf nodes are any of a variety of single-part content types, and the non-leaf nodes are any of a variety of multi-part types. What? Oh! I get it. IMAP 4 protocols allow the clients to retrieve any of the individual MIME parts separately, and also to retrieve portions of the individual parts of the entire message. These mechanisms allow clients to retrieve the text portion of a message without retrieving attached files or to stream input, or to stream content as it is being fetched. Interesting. So IMAP allows you to get a preview of the message without downloading it. That's pretty cool.
Yep, I think that's how Gmail does its little...
I'd hope that's how... or anybody. Outlook,
I should say
anything.
how Inbox does their little thing.
Well, I'd like to think it's anybody that does the preview.
Well, with Inbox, you can do like the little, just drag on your phone, drag down the box, and you can get as much of the email that fits in the box as possible.
Oh, interesting. Message state information, multiple mailboxes on the same server-side searches, and a built-in extension mechanism. Reflecting the experience of earlier Internet protocols, IMAP 4 defines an explicit mechanism by which it may be extended. Well, that's nice. It has some disadvantages, but everything does. And it looks like we're 45 minutes in. We gotta hurry up.
Yeah, how about we talk about that MIME type now?
Yes. Okay, here we go. Not saying anything because it's a mime.
Multi-purpose Internet mail extensions.
Oh, mimes don't talk. Shh. Okay. We don't have that much
time to come out of the glass box.
Okay.
That you call a closet.
I'm a clune. Multi-purpose Internet mail extensions, or MIME, are an Internet standard that extends the format of email to support text and character sets other than ASCII, non-text attachments like audio, video, images, or anything, message bodies with multiple parts, header information, and non-ASCII character sets like internationally. Virtually all human-written Internet mail and a fairly large portion of automated mail is transmitted via SMTP is in MIME format. MIME is specified in 6 linked RFC memoranda, and it lists them all out, with the integration with SMTP email specified in detail in an additional RFC.
Basically, these are your MIME types for the HTTP world.
Yes, although MIME was designed mainly for SMTP, the content types defined by MIME standards are also of importance in communications protocols outside of email, such as HTTP. Servers insert the MIME header at the beginning of any web transmission so you can see what you're the type of what you're downloading. There are MIME-specific headers like MIME-version, content-type, content-disposition, content transfer encoding. That should have been turned off. MIME also supports the encoded word. I believe Google calls this puny type. It's a way to incorporate it's to reduce...
Well, puny type is a specific type of Unicode for very small Unicode encodings.
I saw, while researching this, I saw some article about someone trying to encode a domain name that it was like umlaut, like u@example.com. And because all of this stuff only supports ASCII and the U with the umlaut is not natively supported, I guess, you have to encode it with puny type or using, which is probably an implementation of this, the encoded word.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
In this specific example, it uses the token equals question mark. So the form is equals question mark, the character set, question mark the encoding, question mark the encoded text, and then a question equals at the end. I'm guessing you'll also have to escape question marks in the code. Yeah. Multi-part messages. Now, this is where email really gets fun. A MIME multi-part message, if you've ever opened up a message that you received from one of these programs and you open it up in plain text, it is big. Because modern email contains all of these MIME parts. If you have any, which describe a lot of stuff, and a lot of them include base 64 encoded binary data. That's how you can transmit binary data over ASCII. The problem is that base 64 stuff inflates the file size by 20 to 30%. A MIME multi-part message contains a boundary in the content type header, which could be anything. Usually, it should be something that doesn't occur in the message. Is placed between the parts at the beginning and end of the body message as follows, and it gives an example. There are multi-part subtypes. The MIME standard defines various multi-part message subtypes which specify the nature of the message parts and their relationship to one another. The subtype is specified in the content type header of the overall message. So if you see a content type with multi-part /something, then it means it has multiple things in it. Well, that's pretty self-explanatory. Different multi-parts are mixed, which has, I guess, mixed anything. Digest, which is a simple way to send multiple text messages. Message contains an email message, including any headers, useful for forwarding. Alternative includes something that could be a different format denoted by its content type header. I don't know why that's different from mixed. Anyway, related, report, signed, encrypted, form data, mixed dash replace. X mixed replace was developed as part of a technology to emulate server push and streaming over HTTP. Interesting. All parts of a mixed replace message have the same semantic meaning. However, each part replaces the previous part as soon as it is received completely. Do you know what this is?
Vaguely.
Originally developed by Netscape, it is still supported by Mozilla, Firefox, Chrome, Safari, and Opera, but traditionally ignored by Microsoft.
Yeah.
Commonly used in IP cameras is the MIME type for MJPEG streams. Interesting. And then there's the last one is byte range. So that's how you can declare your content types for multiple files and then send them over email. And it'll encode, like I said, all of your binary stuff in ASCII, which does inflate the file size, but allows you to transmit it over the internet. Now, there's SMIME. And because this was written by people in their 50s and they hearken for the 1980s, they have S/MIME, S/MIME, like OS/2, PC/2. What?
I mean, it just says secure. The idea is...
but okay, you don't have... It's not... SSL is not secure/socket layer. You know? It's not HTTP/security. It's S. Anyway.
Okay.
The slash is what I'm getting at because it reminds me of the 1980s. Is a standard SMIME, standard for public key encryption and signing of MIME data. SMIME is on an IETF standards track and defined in a number of documents, most importantly some RFCs. And I didn't turn on the notes. Okay. SMIME provides the following cryptographic security services for electronic messaging applications. Wait, really quickly, I'm just going to list this off. Authentication, message integrity, non-repudiation of origin, privacy, and data security. And it has its own MIME content type, which is PKCS7-MIME.
So basically, MIME type, SMIME type are MIME types for encrypted payloads.
I mean, it wouldn't... Right. So it's the wrapper for something that's already encrypted.
No, it's defining the type of the encrypted stuff.
It's defining the type... Oh, it's metadata.
It's a MIME type.
But it's not actually encryption.
No, it's just defining the MIME type for encrypted payloads.
Interesting. Before SMIME can be used in any of the above applications, one must obtain and install an individual key or certificate from either one's in-house CA or from a public CA. The accepted best practice is to use separate private keys for signature and for encryption, as this permits escrow of the encryption key without compromise to the non-repudiation property of the signature key. Are you sure this isn't encrypted?
No, it can be encrypted
I'm sorry,
itself.
SMIME doesn't do the encryption, it just tells about the encryption. Is that it?
Yes.
Okay. SMIME is sometimes considered not properly suited for use via webmail. Though support can be hacked into a browser, some security practices require the private key to be kept accessible to the user, but inaccessible from the webmail server, complicating the key advantage of webmail, which is providing ubiquitous accessibility. However, SMIME is tailored for end-to-end security.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and maybe now we should move on to the actual email authentication, which is a pretty interesting area.
It is. Let's see. What is the next one?
You got things like we touched upon PGP signatures.
Here we go. Other modern additions to email standards. So one modern addition was the multiple accounts per domain. Mm-hmm. Email authentication.
Then, like I was saying, we touched upon the PGP signatures, which provide identity, not really authentication. But then you got things like DNSSEC is something that not many public
well,
DNS
is DNSSEC different
support,
from DKIM?
But it is something that's coming down the pipeline to actually say that this domain is in fact this domain. from a more secure standpoint. So that way, that MX record, you can be a lot more confident in, is in fact that MX record.
But how much different is DNSSEC from what already exists today, which is DKIM, domain keys identified mail, which is another
Well, that's more
authentication
email
method.
specific, but that's not for actually finding the MX record necessarily. DNSSEC is more of just a generalized DNS
just for the
security
DNS. Okay.
standard. And this
DKIM
is
for the email itself.
Yes, and and this is for the MX record in this specific case, where instead of because actually bulk of the internet's DNS requests come over UDP, and that can be hijacked a lot more easily than TCP, which bulk of the TCP DNS requests are actually coming from Google right now, and those are much harder to hijack. And interestingly, it's also
Are most
a
of
bit
them
more
coming
efficient.
from Google because so many people use Google's DNS servers?
No, just Google is a bit more. They see the benefit in doing DNS over TCP. It's a bit harder to develop at scale for the DNS server side, but it is also the fact that while connections are a bit more difficult to manage than just sending packets out, it is the case that at least with Google, there's a few other. Actually, mostly Chinese DNS resolvers that will use DNS over TCP, but they set up a connection per request, while Google tends to, within a certain amount of time, have an open TCP connection. I'll send multiple requests down a single connection.
Interesting.
Yep.
Google's messing with a lot of stuff these days.
Well, actually, anyone in DNS is I'd say, has implemented DNS over TCP at least, and are gunning for DNSSEC.
Interesting. So I guess when we finally get to DNSSEC, we'll still have things like DKIM and SPF, which is the sender policy framework.
How about you tell us what DKYN is?
DKIM, not DKNY.
Did I say that?
Is an email authentication method. It lets a domain associate its name with a message by affixing a digital signature to it. Verification is carried out using the signer's private key published in the DNS record itself, and so you add a text record to the MX. No. So you add a text record to the DNS records for your domain.
Yeah, it's a separate record.
That has the public key for this digital signature. Now,
if you're putting the public key in there, that's no longer a text record. Actually, it's the proper use would actually be a cert record.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So there's. In this respect, DKIM differs from end-to-end digital signatures because their signatures are not visible to end users, and they're usually affixed or verified by the infrastructure so no one actually sees it. That's used in conjunction with SPF, not the suntan lotion stuff, but the sender policy framework, which is another way to detect email spoofing and provide email authentication by allowing email exchangers to check that incoming mail is basically validated through a block list, I believe, or that it validates through a block list and it's actually coming from the domain that it says it is, and it uses another specially formatted text record. The list of authorized sending hosts from a domain is published in the DNS records for that domain. So actually the whole list, or probably a link to the list or something, is published in the DNS records for that domain, and then that's a simple way to validate if your message can make it in. Email spam and phishing also used forged from addresses, so publishing and checking SPF records can be considered anti-spam techniques. Breaks plain message forwarding. When a domain publishes an SPF fail policy, legitimate users sent to receivers forwarding their mail to third parties may be rejected and or bounced. Yeah. So an example of SPF is it says... example.com, period, because it's a fully qualified domain name, in text, and it says V equals SPF1, and then it just has IP ranges. IP4:192.020, and then another IP4 range, and then some other commands. So it's actually giving ranges of IP addresses in the text record for the DNS, and if your machine is not in one of those ranges, then you don't get to send the mail.
Very interesting.
Very interesting. It has some other syntax and more advanced qualifiers and modifiers to really... It's actually pretty robust. I'm always fascinated by ways of encoding text in plain text fields that let you do cool stuff like this. So, Yeah. That's the sender policy framework.
Nice.
There's of course transport layer security and SSL for email, which just encrypts all of your traffic end to end. But what happens with email, it's really funny, because this is built on top of the existing SMTP server, you'll get a hello from these servers. You'll get
hello.
Yeah, but you'll say hello to them, and they'll say hello back, but then if you don't, they'll expect almost to start TLS. A lot of times if it's enabled and you just send a regular plain text message, it'll reject it. But it just starts sending encrypted text to you over the wire, and you don't necessarily know what to do because it's encrypted. So if that happens to you and you're, let's say, a world-class politician, you can make a law that says encryption should be illegal, and then you'll be able to read the contents of the message. Isn't that great?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. That's the way to...
Every country should have their own internet. That's how it should be. And
almost
the country
how it
manages
was.
how that internet's encrypted or not. So that way the entire country can just see what's going on in that internet. And then all the British government will be so happy that way.
Well, the British government wants to be the purveyor of internet regulations, the premier country for internet regulations in the world. Man, if anybody loves regulations, it's got to be the British. But, let's see. There's the... I think that's it for email authentication. We talked about... and the first few lines of an email header are usually trusted, which is probably bad because, like I said, this is all text, easily fudgeable. Unless you do all of the things that we just talked about to authenticate and to make sure that it's actually you and to make sure that the server that you're using is properly secured and authenticating. There's, of course, spam. And in fact, we introduced a law about spam in 2003, done by our last buffoon president, W.
I mean, sounds like it was actually a good move. But
It actually was a great move.
honestly, I'm amazed it's not named the Nigerian Prince Act.
There you go. It's called the Controlling the Assault of Non-Solicited Pornography and Marketing Act. How about the porn storm?
That sounds so specific.
Yeah, I'm sure. How about porn storm wars? It plays on the word canning, or putting an end to spam. Get it? Canned spam. The Canned Spam Act is occasionally referred to by critics as the You Can Spam Act because the bill fails to prohibit many types of email spam. What?
There it is.
And preempts some state laws. This was W. Prevent some state law. I mean, it was Congress. Preempt some state laws that would otherwise have provided victims with practical means of redress. In particular, it does not require emailers to get permission before they send marketing messages. It also prevents states from enacting stronger anti-spam protections and prevents individuals who receive spam from suing spammers. This act also has been largely unenforced.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Good job. Well, we tried. We raised awareness, we tried, and then we failed. And now we haven't done anything.
Yeah, we get a participation trophy.
It's great. Yes. So, we've reached our hour, Christian.
Mm-hmm.
It's midnight.
Yep, time to turn into a pumpkin.
Do you turn into a pumpkin?
Yep.
We were going to talk about we just did all the...
I guess you leave your glass slipper, or I don't know.
I mean, I could just keep going and then edit in responses from you from earlier episodes.
I'd be impressed.
I have the raw audio. I could do that. But I think we may have to leave this for a part 2. So now that we gave everybody the boilerplate for email, we can talk about the cool stuff, like HTML. You know, we can't just let this go. Because there's all this stuff about responsive emails, how to make a responsive email, how to make a hybrid email. We can talk about that next time. I'll give you this as a tease. And I will try to have more of a happy ending with this show. As we're number 21, our show... Well, first, we're number 21. Our show is Old Enough to Drink. On the 21st. Hey, look at that.
Ho ho.
I want to start trying to have a happy ending to these shows. Pardon the pun. And the happy ending to this show is that there is actually a modern way of developing responsive emails. It's called MJML. And it's another middleware
Michael Jackson
markup
markup language?
Sorry?
Michael Jackson markup language?
Yes. No, Michael Jordan markup language. Sponsored by Nike. I don't even know what it's called because they don't even say it. Wow.
Well,
good job, guys.
I know a lot of places put out like frameworks for years.
Well, the thing is that email is much harder to develop than a regular web page.
Oh, absolutely, because you can't send over like multiple files.
Well, there's that. There's also there's the plethora of clients that don't adhere to any standards. There's the inability to target the clients with hacks like you can with browsers. And there's not really many standards for email, so you're writing it in this horrible mix of 1997 HTML and 2017 HTML. There are responsive emails, but you have to use responsive CSS with ancient HTML because that's how email works these days. But with MJML, which I can't believe, I'm trying to look for this, it doesn't actually say what the hell this stands for.
Maybe they just everything on the web is an acronym. We need to be an acronym. There's no other way to go about it.
Basically. Sorry, I had to sneeze.
On
that note, MJML is a React-based HTML email framework. How's
Really?
that? How's that for modern? You can actually make a React app that creates HTML email.
Does it spit out an HTML email, or is it actually run in the browser?
Why don't we answer that question next time? It runs in the browser.
Boo.
No, well, I mean, the example they have is like a Gmail mockup, but it allows you. It says it allows you to have things like carousels in email, which you can't really do. Gmail is starting to allow some JavaScript, but we can talk about the modern email and dealing with modern email in part 2 of this discussion. But now you have the whole bedrock for the email system and how all of the message sending works. So next time, we can talk about actually making email. And that sounds ridiculous because you can fart out an email message and it just gets to somebody's phone like that. But it's all of this complex stuff has to happen in a precise order, and everything has to be encrypted and decrypted and sent and received in a certain way. It's pretty marvelous how the modern world works.
Yeah. Come a long way from ones and zeros.
Exactly. Or Morse code. So, on that note, I believe it's time to end. So, Christian, do you approve the first part of this pull request?
Looks good to me.
Well, then hopefully we can see you all next week for part 2. I'll go ahead and hit merge. And we'll do that thing I just said and see you all next week right here on Pull Request. This has been a Pneumonium production. The views and opinions expressed on Pull Request do not necessarily reflect those of Pneumonium, LLC, or its subsidiaries.